Coming up in today's episode, big Tesla Q3 results, a new aluminum battery that might change the world, and Tim talks to Chris Gebhardt about Starlink. Let's get ludicrous. Hey there, welcome to Our Ludicrous Future. This is the podcast where we talk about all the cool future stuff that's happening right now that's gonna make tomorrow totally ludicrous. I'm Joe Scott, and I keep getting weirder with that intro every single time. With me is Ben Sullins.
What's up, guys? It's Ben Sullins from Teslanomics, and we are missing Timothy Dodd today. But
is he in Europe yet? Is he there?
I think he might be gone. He might have already been through Europe. He's off. He's, yeah, he's doing the John Glenn route. He's now over Asia, and then he'll be, over the Pacific there pretty soon.
Godspeed, Tim Dodd.
Yeah. Well, how have you guys been? I'm sure you missed me.
Last week was great.
Oh, yeah.
It was the best episode we've ever done. Am I the only constant here? It's like I'm the only... You guys just kind of come and go, and I'm still here. I got stuff to do. I got a life. But not as much as you. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
On being a new daddy.
Yep. And yes, you still need to go watch Top Gun. I did listen to the episode last week, so...
Okay, well, you said that you're halfway through Galaxy Quest, so I guess I need to go get halfway through Top Gun.
What you should do with your wife is before the new Top Gun is in theaters, you should just watch the first one and then go watch the second one immediately afterwards. I wonder if they'll do those kind of things, where they did like the, not the Hobbit. What was the Hobbit? The Lord of the Rings, where they'd have like...
The first one was, yeah.
Yeah, right. But the book was The Hobbit, right? And then they had the movies. But like...
there were two different books.
Oh, okay. I don't know. They're all the same. I don't know. Harry Potter. Yeah.
People are losing their S in the comments of this right now.
I mean, there's two...
We just lost everybody. Our audience retention just went down to like 2.
It's like 2 5-foot kids that need a tan. And, they're running around doing things with wizards. I don't know these things. I'm old. Okay?
As a former 5-foot tall kid who needed a tan, I take offense to that. Just so you know.
You are allowed to be offended by that. No.
So how is the home? How is the family? How's the new baby?
Well, they're this time around. So this is number 2 for us, and it feels a lot more chill than the first time around. There's a lot of the physical exhaustion, the lack of sleep, all that, but. It's just what it is. I mean, it's when your first kid, you're like, they move their arm, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? Oh my God, is that okay? And you're up and you're worried, you're Googling, and that is the worst thing to do as a new parent is to use the internet. Like, there should be a device you can install in your house. Like, yeah, the internet, and you guys let's just keep you off it for a couple weeks, and then you'll be good because everything. And this time around, it's like, oh, is he crying? Oh. Was it been like 30 minutes he's been crying? Oh, okay. I guess we should grab him maybe.
Because you've already learned to tune that out.
Yeah. And so, it's just you're a bit more relaxed. Like you've been here before. It's still a very demanding thing, but baby's healthy and happy, mama's healthy and happy, so there'll be a lot of little speed bumps along the way, and a lot of work, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I've said it, said it on Twitter. I said it before that if men had to give birth, the species would just end because the strength it takes is just mind blowing. It's just amazing what women are capable of. And, if you've never seen it firsthand, I recommend just go down to a hospital, ask if you can participate in anyone's birth, and, they'll let you in and you can witness it yourself. I'm kidding. Don't do that. But no, it's incredible. It's always.
I'm sure they appreciate that. There's like a gallery of people standing up there watching this.
Yeah. So just how amazing is it? It's always just incredible. I love Jerry Seinfeld's whole bit where he's like, once you become a father, you have this bit of arrogance about you, like, to hell with the world. Like I can make my own people. Right? Like I can grow my own food. Yeah, I can grow my own food. I've got solar panels and electric cars. I don't even need other people. I can make people. Like whatever. Like, screw everyone else. We're good. Like we can do this. So no, that's a great feeling and we're all very, really happy. So
how's Jack taking it?
Jack's doing great. He is a very gentle, very kind big brother. Boys, it's always, I don't know if girls are the same, I'm sure, but a lot of our friends that have boys, they're either like Jack, where they like to very engineer little things and organize everything and be very particular about stuff, or they're just like bam bam and just destroy and throw and run and jump. And Jack's not that kid. So with his little brother, he's very, kind of attentive and all that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I mean, neither of us had that. We like got to know our siblings later in life, but me and Jenny were basically raised only children. So neither of us have this sense of like what Jack's feeling right now. So it's kind of interesting to see him going through it and being like, yeah, I don't know, dude. But yeah, it's great.
So is he 4 or 5?
He's just over 4 in like 3 or 4 months.
Okay. So my sister and I, we were 3 years apart. So like when I was a freshman, she was a senior kind of thing. So that's what I grew up with. That's what I understand.
How was that in school then? Yeah, because you're going in as a freshman to college, and she was still into high school. She was still in high school? Mm-hmm. Okay. And
for 1 year, yeah, we were in school together.
Yeah.
Basically.
And was that weird at all? Or was it like you didn't even...
I grew up in such a small town. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's any weirder than anywhere else, but she was really smart. I mean, she's still really smart. She didn't stop being really smart. So she was the salutatorian of the class and all that. So, cheerleader and very overachiever and stuff. So there was and I was the goofball. I was always the comedian that would, try to do something silly and fall down and land on my face. And, I don't know. So there was a lot to live up to. I think a lot of people expected me to step up and,
Did your sister ever tell you that, like, so your sister was the first in your family and then you? And do you have any others?
The two of us.
Yeah. And so it's so true. Someone tweeted it the other day that was laughing. It was like, really the heroes in life are the firstborn children that got all the crap from the parents. So that way the next kid's born can have like an easy life. Did your sister ever tell you that like your parents were super hard on her and then like way easy on you?
If anything, it was the opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, because she was such an overachiever and she was the firstborn, and maybe it's because she was a girl and I was a boy or something. I don't know, but like she was kind of everybody's darling, and I was just the goofball. I was just the silly kid that would go in my room and listen to music, and So, I mean, there's all kinds of trauma there we could talk about if you want to, but no need for that.
Whole different, thing we're getting into.
It all got me here.
Everything is fine.
Everything's great. Okay, enough of that. No, my sister and I are good though. We're good friends, and
that's awesome.
All that, yeah.
So
yeah. Well, congratulations one last time.
Thank you, sir.
And best wishes going forward. But sounds like you got some Tesla news to talk about today.
I was going to say congratulations are also in order for the Tesla.
See,
family.
I just didn't even try to make it clever. I just jumped right in there.
I know. It was really hard to listen to last week, guys, so I apologize. God, this is why we need sponsors, just so we can be like, all right, stay tuned for what's coming up next, and just cut. Like, there's no segue needed. You're just like, end here.
The sponsor segue.
Yeah, there you go. That's your role there. We'll figure that out. All right, so Tesla Q3 2019. Today we're in Q4, so this is last quarter, and they just had their earnings call, and they reported their financials. If you rewind the clock a little bit, they published their production and delivery numbers usually a week or so after the quarter ends. So we've had those for over a month now, and then a month after the quarter ends, they do the actual the earnings call. So here we are, and we learned quite a bit. There is now they have these kind of PowerPoint presentations, which I'm not a huge fan of. I liked before just the web page version of it, but the new CFO has to put his mark on the company apparently. There are a lot of things here. I'm just going to show you Elon's tweet because this is basically the short of it. All right, so get to the chase. Tesla Q3 results: Shanghai Gigafactory ahead of schedule. Amazing. Incredible that they're actually like running through the tests and checking everything, but they're about ready to start making cars in China. They will be making cars in China this year. Incredible. And if you recall, it was a dirt field in like February, at like the beginning of this year. So, and this is funny. This is when I look at other, like when I talked about Rivian, it's like, hey, yeah, you guys, yeah, you got a factory, still working on it. Tesla went from a ground dirt to working factory in less than a year. Like, get it going, guys. You can do this, right?
So just real quick, who deserves the credit for that? Is it the Chinese construction system that they have over there or something, or is it Tesla having learned some things and know how to build the things really quickly?
No.
A little bit of both.
I would go far less on the Tesla side and much more on the Chinese.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Tesla hired people there to manage and run all that, so yeah, like they get some credit, but this is just China, man. This is what they do for the world, right?
Yeah.
They're the manufacturing hub of the entire planet, so. Yeah, they know it inside and out. And it's one of those things where once you, I don't know, like sign the right documents or, buy the lattes for the right people, things move at light speed. And that's what we're seeing. So they're going to be making the Model 3. There were a lot of questions on the earnings call about this. I tried to listen in yesterday as much as I could. There were a lot of questions about, hey, what's going on there. They kind of said they're not really sure exactly what the right mix of models they'll be making. Model 3 will obviously be the dominant one, but obviously they're going to make S, X, everything else. There's a second building that has been spy shotted that will be making the powertrains and batteries. So this one facility, it's not all under one roof, but this one site, we'll call it, will be making everything. Which is their model for going forward. And, Elon has talked about this before, that the design of the Gigafactories may be their actual, like, strongest, thing, is the ability to hey, blueprint, give me an empty field, boom, we're done, and we can start making cars really quickly. So that's what's going to allow them to scale, 5-10 years from now. Also, related to that, they should be announcing the European Gigafactory this year, I think they said. So we'll see, as more, and that's, I'm guessing, going to be in Germany. I'll bet you a beer on that one. That. Yeah, because they have Groman, which I believe is the company that makes the automation stuff and designs a lot of the equipment. Germany is obviously a very very strong talent pool for automotive stuff. So, although maybe maybe the local politics there with, Mercedes and all them will be able to push them out. I don't know. Lots of stuff to come, but, there. In addition to Shanghai being ahead of schedule, Model Y is ahead of schedule, which is fantastic news. Now, Joe, are you guys buying another Tesla yet?
No plans right now.
Yeah. And what does your wife drive? Does she have a
Honda?
Oh, okay, just a car, not an SUV or anything like that?
No.
I mean, you're in Texas. I figured, it's, hey.
I don't think we even have room in our garage for anything bigger than what we've got, honestly. So.
What? Blasphemy. Come on. This is Texas. You got to have, like, the monster truck. I figured,
I'm really good at fitting in around here. I've always been good at that.
Yeah. I am, by the way, like, let me just pause on this. I am very excited. I know I said get to the point, and I'm like dragging it on. I am very excited to come to Texas next year for Fully Charged Live. And that was so, I don't know, we haven't set on what the participation is going to be. I'm definitely going to be heavily involved. I think we've talked about maybe doing a live episode of the podcast or something.
We need to talk about this. It's coming up.
Yeah. So I've been emailing with them back and forth, and they're like, yeah, let us know once you're done with baby, and we'll, figure it out. So we'll all get on the horn here soon, but I'm just excited to come hang out with Joe, because regardless of whether or not, whether or not you're coming, I mean, what's it, 2-3 hours away, Dallas, or to Austin?
Depending on what time of day you go, I-35 is just it's Mad Max Fury Road, basically.
Yes.
No, it's about 3 hours or so.
Oh, okay.
But no, I plan on going one way or another. I kind of figured we would do something, if not officially, then maybe kind of unofficially.
It's like a meetup or something.
What happened to me here?
Just lost your camera there. All good. So yeah, we'll figure something out. So guys, stay tuned for Fully Charged Live info coming sometime soon. While Joe figures his camera out, I'll take a drink of water and continue on our Q3 update. The solar installs, this is a big deal. Solar installs are up 48% from Q2. And this is, and Elon said it on the call, energy products may become the biggest revenue part of the company. That's a big deal because, I mean, whether or not you buy an electric car, I think there's a bigger barrier to entry. Getting solar on your house, especially with how Tesla has it designed where it's now you don't have to put any money up front. You literally just start saving money. It's like, as Elon said, a money printing machine on your roof. Everybody's interested in that. So I think the market for solar is actually far bigger than the market for electric cars. So this would be cool. Tesla was profitable. You know, it's funny. It's like the fourth bullet here. So they actually reported a positive net income, a GAAP profitability. And they also had positive free cash flow, which means more cash in the bank, which means any worries about bankruptcy or anything like that are just kind of unfounded. So there's a lot more details and all that, but I think we can just go straight to some charts. So Tesla, as I mentioned, did show a profit here, which is incredible. I actually kind of wonder about that. What we're looking at here on the screen, if you guys are following, if you're just listening, is at Hypercharts, which is from Hyperchange. Gally Russell, who I think we're all a fan of, does a great job here. The stock soared like 20% yesterday. Model 3 is still dominating sales. I mean, all of these things are very, very positive here. Let's look at the revenue and operating income here. So, you know, operating income at 261 million, revenue of 6.3 billion. So revenue actually was shorter than I think analysts were expecting, but overall profitability was great because they did a lot of cost-cutting measures. And so that's really an interesting question. Yeah, here's a good net income. So net income is profitability. So when you hear those two terms, they're interchangeable. This is their second highest profit. If you recall at the beginning of, or Q3 of last year, they had a $312 million profit, and this one we're about half of that, which is better because I personally think this is still a little high because I don't want them to be actually making too big a profit right now at all. Like, I don't want them to be losing massive amounts of money, but I think just closer to zero would be preferable for me.
You want them reinvesting that money into research and infrastructure and stuff.
Exactly. So, for example, let's say you closed half of your service centers and fired everybody. Great. You just saved a bunch of money. You're profitable. Investors love you. What do customers do? Now they hate you.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So my philosophy on this is always, let's start with employees. Let's make employees happy. Because when employees love their job and they're coming in, they're doing their best work. Who benefits from that? Your customers, which means your customers are happy. They're telling other people, they're staying with you. When customers are happy, then your sales go up and your retention is better and you make more money. And when you do all those things, investors are happy. So that's kind of the hierarchy as far as I'm concerned for my 18 years in corporate America, is like, take care of your people first. So profitability is not a sign of like taking care of your people. Like,
right. Sometimes it's the opposite.
It usually is. So the fact that they're profitable, great. I love that it's, you know, the stock went up. There's a lot of other reasons that this is a good thing. I'm not saying profits are necessarily like not something you want, but if that's what you're really striving for, usually that means you're giving up somewhere else. And that's where I would be more concerned. I would be far more concerned that Tesla is pissing off customers and pissing off employees than pissing off investors. Investors can eat last. They don't have to be the first ones at the lunch table.
Yeah. Well, I feel like anybody who's invested in Tesla, well, I can't speak for all of them, but I feel like the average Tesla investor is in it for the long haul. They understand that this isn't a quarter by quarter thing. It's a decade at a time kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Or they should be thinking that way if they're not. if they're not, they're invested in the wrong company.
Yeah, it's
so
a thing.
Speaketh Joe.
Yeah, well, it's a thing, right? Because it depends on what you're talking about. So if you're talking about retail investors like you and me, I think that's probably true for most people. You invest in Tesla because you maybe you think you're going to make some money in the short term, but you're more likely thinking much longer out. But the retail investor, in terms of percentage of ownership of that stock, is tiny. So the majority of people doing these investments are these big institutional investors that are throwing in hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are the guys that really move the stock. And for them, the deal is that they want short returns. And that means that the company needs to do things to generate those short returns. And this is why I hate the stock market, and I think they should not be public, because that behavior does not help customers, does not help us accelerate this transition.
Yeah. Well, I agree. But you said the stock actually went up yesterday.
Something like 20%. Yeah, massive. Over $300. I think
it seems like in the past they've had profitable quarters and the stock still went down. Somehow.
It's wild. Yeah, usually to me, it's not universally true. It's not like a law of physics, but it's not far off that if the stock market likes what a company's doing, then the customers of that company often don't like that thing. Yeah, somebody's getting screwed usually when the stock market's happy with a company. Usually. And I say that as somebody that lived in corporate America for almost 2 decades, and for a great example, layoffs. Layoffs are terrible. I remember I was working at MCI, and they closed the call center, and it made sense for them to close it. Nothing against why they did it, but there were 3 generations of a single family that had been working there. The older generation had been there for over 20-something years. They had been working there. And it was like their daughter and their grandkids were all working there. This was, they had dedicated their lives. MCI. Yeah. Remember them?
No, I remember them. It's just I usually hear stuff like that with, I don't know, coal companies or like old school.
Well, MCI.
I don't think about that with tech companies that often anyway.
Well, and MCI was, and people are probably like, who's MCI? MCI had been around forever. They actually invented a lot of the early telecommunications technologies. But, they lay the people off. This is like devastating. This is, there were 2,000 people that worked at this call center. Granted, this was in Phoenix, so there's like 5 million people that live there, so it's not that big a deal. But I imagine in a small town, 2,000 people get laid off from the steel mill or something. That's devastating to that town. That's terrible. People's lives like dramatically affected, But guess what? Investors are like, hey, you cut costs. Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So that to me is the inverse relationship between people, reality, and money and companies. It's so true in so many cases. It's not always true, but so that's when I see the stock market going up and I see profitability. I'm like, yeah, let's make sure and not piss off the wrong people, though. Like the investors are the ones that I think should be eating last here.
Man, I didn't realize what an anti-capitalist you were.
I'm not. I'm in for the true form of capitalism.
Okay, comrade.
Yeah, right. No, there's a
Comrade Sullins.
You should check out. People that are listening. There's one of the people I love that talked about this. His name Simon Sinek, and he wrote a book called Start with Why and then Find Your Why and all this. Just brilliant, all the stuff he talks about. And it's not anti-capitalistic. It's anti like current bastardized form of capitalism we have, which puts profits over people. And
is that late stage capitalism? Is that the term that I've heard used before?
I just call it bastard capitalism. It's it's where the entire and Milton Friedman, is one of the guys that you just love to punch in the face. Because he's
never met him, but
yeah, like the Jack Welches and the Milton Friedmans of the world are people, you'd love to just. That's their grave. I'm going to go kick it once or something, because these are the guys that really like propelled this idea that money is more important than people. Yeah. And that's just wrong. I think that when we think about why these structures exist, like the concept of a stock market, it doesn't exist in nature. Like we came up with this, right? Like we should make sure it serves us globally, like, well, and I think it can do both. I don't think it has to be one or the other. So, I'm short on the concept of the stock market, I guess, is what you could say.
Well, I think I've talked about this before, but the thing that officially made me realize that the stock market makes no sense was when some cow in Canada got sick and they were afraid it might have been mad cow disease. So like all of the beef futures fell apart, and then that affected, transportation sectors, and like the entire stock market not crashed, but like had this huge like dip in one day because one cow got sick in Canada.
Yep.
And I'm just like,
introduce high frequency trading and machine learning to that mix. Guess what's going to happen next, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So to me, it's all kind of messed up. But hey, Tesla did great. They're doing great. I love it. Please don't lose sight of the customers. That's my only thing. The customers and the Tesla community are what make Tesla. If they did not have them, they would not be where they're at. They will not continue to exist. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, yes, they make great technology. They do all these things. But if they don't treat their employees right, and those employees don't treat the customers right, it all goes away. So
it's a whole scaling thing. Like, you can sell 100,000 cars, but now you have 100,000 customers to take care of.
Yeah, it's a game of whack-a-mole, right? So this is where W. Edwards Deming is the guy that I look as a sort of deity on how to design companies and in these things, because you can't just have hey, we need more sales, cool, double our sales staff, great. Oh wait, now what about customer service? Oh yeah, that we don't want to do that. Now people are pissed. Now everyone hates us. Now no one's like, oh well, double customer service. Okay, great. Now we have too many customer service people. We need more sales. Okay, like it's just a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And so to break that, you have to think of a company as as Elon or somebody that's an engineer would, a machine, like a system, where you can't just like juice up, turn this gear faster than this one. Like they have to move in sync, which is why companies I've worked at and consulted at, when you look at budgets and you go, okay, you're doubling the sales budget, how much is everyone else getting? Right, like what are you doing to your customer service budget or your tech support budget? Whatever. All these things have to move in step, and it sucks that a lot of the stock market, the incentives, don't care about any of that. They just want you to generate something that makes them more money now. I don't care if you exist in 5 years. That's really the challenge with all this. So,
so something I've been curious about, because it's been a year now since I bought mine. And that was, I think they were just kind of coming out of production hell and maybe right in the middle of logistics hell during all that. And I remember the buying process was incredibly frustrating for me. I did multiple complaints and videos about it and stuff. And I would like to hear from somebody, and maybe if there's anybody who's watching this on YouTube and you want to comment and you've gotten a Tesla recently, I wonder if that process has gotten any smoother, if that's gotten any better, if they're still kind of having all these hang-ups and stuff. I haven't had a lot of people like reaching out to me to complain that maybe use my referral code or anything, but no, I'm curious about that. I'm wondering if that's gotten smoother.
Well, and they talked about that on the earnings call a little bit, where a lot of what they call their efficiencies that they've gained, which reduced the cost, were related to, I think, addressing these kind of things. So there's still that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But, there's still a long way to go. It's one of those things. Like the beauty is, I don't think Tesla really, because they have like an online sales model, they don't really have to scale. Like you don't have to put money into selling the cars.
Right.
You just have to put money into customer service and delivery and all those bits. That's really like, that should be the majority, because the demand, like it speaks for itself. You know what I mean? And once somebody gets one and they're so blown away by it, they tell everyone they know. So you don't have to really spend money to generate sales here. But you absolutely, as you see sales grow, should be making sure that all the money, instead of like developing 10 new models of cars to sell, you should be making sure that your service centers and all the other stuff, superchargers, whatever, are really robust, because that's where a guy, Kawasaki, who's another great business kind of thought leader, talks about this. You want that, you want that Nordstrom's effect. Like, do you guys have a Nordstrom? Oh, you're in Dallas now. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But do you ever shop there ever?
I don't shop anywhere. I mean, yes, I have shopped there, but it's not like I'm there often or anything.
Like we anytime we look at stuff or whatever, like that's often where we'll end up shopping. And it's more expensive, and the stuff is higher end. But I have absolutely 100% confidence that if I don't like the thing or whatever, I take it back, and they are going to do whatever is possible to make me happy. And that is worth money. That is versus like you go to some other random place, maybe you save 10% on something. But yeah, good luck returning it. Good luck at dealing with quality issues. So I think like there are a lot of aspects to having a great business and a great brand. And that's a big one that I really hope Tesla continues to focus on. I've always had incredible service, even before YouTube and any of that. But I know, like your case and like as they've hit kind of a more mass market, it's definitely been a thing that they haven't, succeeded
They've
at.
struggled with. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get anybody out there that's trying to make the case that there's a demand cliff that they've hit or that they've barreling toward. I think, does this disprove that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. That like there's no, I mean, even if they didn't show profitability here, that was a surprise. It doesn't matter if you look at the revenue, the amount of new customers coming in, it's all up. I mean, and it's a network effect, right? It's a what is it, Metcalfe's law, I think, where the cost of getting the first customer is really expensive, and then the 10th customer is cheaper, and then at some point the customers, like the cost of bringing on new customers is dramatically lower than the cost of delivering the thing. And I think we're there with Tesla, man. I mean, doctors we saw at the hospital were like, hey, you're that guy on YouTube that does Tesla stuff, right?
Funny.
Yeah, like my son told me about your channel, so that way, and then I bought my Model 3 because of it. Things like that. And you're just like,
Nice.
That's wild, right?
Yeah.
That's so like the word of mouth marketing that Tesla has is so strong that they don't have to worry about that side of the equation. It's all on the other side. So and I think they've
go ahead.
I would say I think they have a great chance to really like prove people wrong, not just about the sales demand cliff, whatever the numbers show that, but like that real like we will get it right, we will make whatever problems you have right. Like that side of it, I think, is where they still have room to grow.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about, I guess, the word of mouth selling the cars and whatnot. My brother-in-law was in town last weekend and for a conference of some kind. But anyway, we went out to dinner. I picked him up and we drove out there, and he hadn't been in one before. I had to explain how to open the car door and all that kind of stuff, But no, I think it made an impression on him. He really liked it, and I think he's starting to maybe bug my sister about getting one.
There you go. I'm telling you, man.
It's funny to see that happen with people when they get in and they're just like, I have to have this,
My dad, I took him for a ride in my Model X, and it's a P90D, so that thing flies, and probably about the same as what Tim's Performance Model 3 does. And we took off going on down a freeway on-ramp. He almost lost his lunch. And and he said, he was in the Air Force. He said, I've never felt a car take off like that. It felt like back when I was in the Air Force in a jet. And I'm like, that's it. That is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's real easy to sell people on it. It's not a hard argument to make. So
yeah. Well, even though they're doing so well, and they've got these awesome machines, and I'm really good at segues. Perhaps there's room for improvement in the battery.
Oh, fair enough.
Should we talk about this?
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's just go with that one for now. Let's move on.
So I had a lot of people send me this article. People on Patreon sent it my way, and I appreciate that. But yeah, so the story came out. This is in, what is this, Teslarati? Or
Clean Technica.
Clean Technica, sorry. This is Clean Technica. So they did an article about a guy named Trevor Jackson, a Royal Navy officer in the UK, who, the way everybody's talking about this is like this guy invented a battery in his garage that's going to change the world. Like we all love those kinds of stories, right? Well, it's kind of like that. He's also an engineer. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been working on it since 2001. But it's a type of battery called an AluminumAir Battery. And apparently they've been around for a long time, but it's very caustic, the electrolyte that they have to use. But what he has apparently been able to do is create a new formulation that uses an electrolyte that's so clean that you can actually drink it. Apparently he has actually drank.
Tell me he has a YouTube channel for this, because that would be fantastic.
I don't know. I have not seen this, but I've heard about it. But anyway, so apparently it will get 1,500 miles to a charge. And this AluminumAir battery can hold 9 times as energy dense as a lithium-ion battery.
Wow.
All of this sounds great, but here's the clincher, the kicker, the downside.
Yep.
You cannot recharge it.
Oh, what do you mean?
So you can go 1,500 miles on it, but then you have to swap out the battery.
Oh, well, that's not... Well, but then what do you do with the old one? Recycle it?
Mm-hmm. So here's the upside. It's aluminum, one of the most abundant, cheapest metals out there, very easy to recycle. And if this electrolyte is as non-toxic as he says, that's a bonus as well. He makes the argument that you could swap it out in like 90 seconds. And, Elon was even talking about a battery swap solution several years ago that never really went anywhere.
I mean, they demoed it, yeah.
They demoed it.
Yeah.
So the idea is you could have something like that. You could drive it for 1,500 miles or so and then just pull it to a station, swap it out, keep going. How much this would cost is a good question. I don't know. So what do you think? Like, would you want a battery that could go 1,500 miles, but you have to swap out the battery every time?
I'm just more concerned about the longevity of something like that, really. What if you... Okay, so 1,500 miles. Let's say for a lot of people in the U.S., that's a month. You're driving for a month, and then you need to swap it out. Mm-hmm. And it just takes a minute. You just go there. That convenience-wise, that's fine. But what if I want to go on a road trip? And... in Texas, and Texas is massive, and I don't have a battery swap station nearby. I'm not gonna be able to make it there and back. Like, how does that all work? I'm more concerned that the infrastructure wouldn't exist. Like, do I bring one with me? Do I ship one? Hey, I'm going to whatever. I'm going to Conroe, Texas. Let me ship one there before I get there. Like how does that all? I like the idea of the energy density, but I don't know about the logistics of the infrastructure.
Yeah. So here's what I'm wondering. Would it actually be somewhat simple to convert a gas station into a swap station? Okay. Because they already have the underground tanks. So you could have that underground apparatus where you pull up and it just does it real quick and then you're on your way. It might be a subscription model kind of thing. Like you just pay monthly or whatever, and you can swap out whenever you need. Yep. I mean, the advantages are the power density. You wouldn't actually even need as big of a battery. Right. Aluminum is infinitely recyclable, which is great. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a lot better environmental impact to it, arguably.
How do you charge it? So it has to get charged at least the first time.
I mean, my understanding from reading this, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Nikki over at Transport Evolved. She did a great video on this as well. But my understanding is they just would have to, you make give the old one. Yeah. They recycle the old one and give you a new one. Create a new one out of the recycled one, put it into a different car.
Right. Huh.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I wonder, it just doesn't seem as practical as what we have now, I guess.
Yeah, that's my feeling on it. Yeah. It feels like you have to have this whole new infrastructure built in, but again, maybe you could reuse already existing gas stations.
You know what it might be good for is electric planes.
Yeah, they talk about that in here a little bit.
Because if it's 9 times as energy dense, I still don't think you're really close to what the energy density of jet fuel is, but you're probably close enough because there is that company Lilium that's doing their test flights in I think the UK, and that and they haven't. I mean, and they're using something far less energy dense than what you're just describing here. Right. So that might be a cool application. So or there's probably lots of other applications for it. I don't know if a car makes sense though. I mean, hell, just your phone. How about that? Yeah. And you just swap out the battery every 6 months. Well,
so he says here that he thinks this will be a proof of concept proof of concept stepping stone phase in the transition to aluminum air batteries, blah, blah, blah. We are in discussions with 2 aircraft manufacturers.
Yeah.
It's not going to be suitable for jets, but it could work in propeller planes and be suitable for short-haul passenger and cargo flights. So they did mention that in there. They talk about there's a conversion operation to convert internal combustion engines to this that would cost like $3,500 to $4,000 each.
Wow, that's cheap.
To convert that. Sounds kind of cheap, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah.
And he's got some kind of deal with Austin Electric, which used to be the Austin Motor Company in the UK, which eventually became something else, British Motor something. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Okay, here we go. He claimed his aluminum air could power the same car for longer, would just cost 5,000 pounds. So he's saying that the batteries would cost 5,000 pounds each. So my question is, does that mean you got to pay $5,000 every time you swap out the battery?
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
I mean, that's not going to work.
No. But if you had 100 people on a jet paying fare for 25 flights before having to do that.
Yeah. Or a bus, maybe.
Right. Yeah, it seems like the nature of it would be lend itself better to other applications. Yeah. Or home batteries, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Or it might just be a range extender for, like, if you had like a tiny version of that battery that could give you an extra 100 miles or something like that, then, you know, if you were on a road trip, that might cut down on range anxiety because there's like a little backup there that can kick in if you need.
Yeah, I would totally do that. Did you see the video we did where Jay who built that suitcase battery that we did? Yeah. And that thing, I mean, that's just like dope as you can make it. That thing was like, I've looked at other commercial products and nothing even touches that suitcase battery he had. And it didn't have a chance against the car. It did not stand. It's like. So
this is a difficult problem.
Yeah. The amount of energy in the cars is just tremendous. This is where I would really like to see the vehicle to grid thing come back. 'Cause I think that's especially now with all the power outages here in California.
Oh God, yeah.
Like imagine I could run my house on one of my cars for almost a week. Like just. Anybody now, granted, I mean, yeah, it's not everybody, it's whatever, but hey, it's something, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes the perfect solution isn't available, and so you know you can't ignore the good stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So one more. Well, there's a couple of questions that I still have. Is power density, like how much power can it actually push out from the battery?
Yeah.
Is that the same as lithium ion? I don't know. And one little caveat. Just have to throw it in there, that was at the bottom of this article from Clean Technica, was that this was based on an article from the Daily Mail.
Oh, God.
Which I've been told by our British brethren that is not the paragon of journalistic integrity sometimes.
These were the guys that were on the German side in World War II, right? They were advocating. No, I'm not joking. This is like what, and that
I'm going to abstain. I don't know the answer to that one.
And I didn't make that up. That's what my British EV YouTuber friends, guess you guys can figure who that is. That's what they told me.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but
I mean, we all had the choices to make.
We all had to figure it out.
Well, so now would be a good time to jump over to Tim's interview with Chris Gebhardt, I suppose.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why don't we do that?
Hi guys, it's me, Tim Dodd, and I am on my way to Europe, or I'm in Europe actually. By the time you're listening to this right now, I'm actually going to take a little break. I don't know anything about breaks, but I guess I'm going to try to just take a break for a week. So this week, I decided to meet with my friend Chris Gebhardt from NASAspaceflight.com. Chris is literally like the gold standard of industry reporting for spaceflight news. Chris, hi.
Hi, Tim. How's it going?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent myself. And
good.
that you A, get a break, and B, get a break in Europe.
Yeah, it's this weird thing. My friend and I, this is like 5 months ago, my friend just sent me a text. Hey, man, I found flights for $350. You want to go to Europe? I'm like, yes.
Yeah, for that amount of money, you go to Europe. Yeah.
For that amount of money, you go to Europe. Yeah, so we're gonna go doing a little castle chasing, the two of us, and take pictures and just hang out.
Nice.
Yeah. So, Chris, how long have you been doing? For those of you that don't know, Chris, Chris is again like industry standard in my opinion. Like you set the bar for reporting and for staying on top of spaceflight. You're easily one of my go-to sources when I need like the facts. Chris Gebhardt is where I go.
Well,
and NASA spaceflight. You guys have been. Oh yeah. You guys are like you're on it, and everyone there is so dedicated. Tell us like how long have you been doing this? And just give us your rundown, your elevator pitch here of what you guys do.
Yeah. So I have to answer the how long have I been doing this a couple different ways. So professionally, I've been doing it for about 12 years now. I started with NSF in February of 2008, about a week before the STS-122 Shuttle Atlantis mission that launched the Columbus module up to the International Space Station. So that's the professional answer to that. But I was born and raised in Daytona Beach, Florida, which is about 60 miles north of the Kennedy Space Center. So we could walk into our backyards and watch the uncrewed rockets, the Titans, the Atlases, the Deltas take off. And anytime there was a human launch on the shuttle, didn't matter what time of day or if I missed school, my dad would take me down there to watch them.
Oh, cool.
I'm actually really upset that I lost this photograph in one of my moves. But there was a photo that I had for the longest time taken by my mom, and it's of my dad holding me when I'm 10 months old, and we're standing on the river, and a rocket is launching in the background, and the date on that photo led me to understand that was the return to flight mission after the Challenger disaster.
No way.
So literally from the time I was born and after Challenger, but before they started flying again, through to the end of the program, I don't remember them all, but I did see every single shuttle flight from that moment on. So,
dude, I didn't realize. I knew you loved the shuttle, but I didn't realize like you are a shuttle child, literally.
Yes, literally, yeah.
Whoa.
So, to then like go from like, you know, just being across the river in Titusville, to eventually standing at the countdown clock at the press site, doing it that professionally. I can't even begin to say how much of a dream come true that was. And then that has just like proliferated from there after the shuttle program ended and commercial crew and commercial cargo began. It's just, it's still immensely insane to me every single time I drive into Kennedy and the Cape for these launches, and then I'm standing, you know, like what seems like 100 feet away from a Falcon 9 rocket, you know.
Yes.
It's just insane. Like the days where I'm like kind of down and everything like that, it's I remind myself that I have one of the coolest jobs on the planet.
Absolutely. And it is cool. Like there is still something majestic and magic about driving on to Kennedy Space Center. Like it almost takes like even no matter how distracted or late or like whatever I am, like you always have to take this like pause for a second, you know, and just kind of soak it in and then get to work. But like there's always just that moment of like just hollowed ground, you know.
Cause you've done this drive too, so like, you know, but like to help other people orient, like you come through the guard gate and then you turn onto the main road, and it's just the gigantic vehicle assembly building, like way off in the distance. It already looks huge, you know, and you're 11 miles away from it, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you reach it and you turn down the other road to go to the press site, and you make that turn, and there's Pad 39A. You know, Apollo and Shuttle and Falcon Heavy and soon to be Starship. And it's just, it's the first pad you see when you make the turn. And I think that's a pretty damn iconic visual when you make that turn. Yeah.
It really is. And yeah, you're right. We are very, very, very lucky that gets, I don't get to do it nearly as, you know, I maybe get to go down once or twice a year. And you're there pretty much every launch. Like when's the last time you couldn't make it to a launch?
Oh, when the last time? Well, the last time I couldn't make it to a launch, I was actually traveling in. I was actually traveling to another launch at Vandenberg. So yes, I missed a launch for a launch. Just pretty much how it goes in this business.
That's nuts, especially lately. Like, this is going to be a real issue, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, if those launch rates are come anywhere close to what they're predicted to be, it's going to be. Oh my gosh, it's going to be insane. But I love those days where you get like something's launching from the Cape and a minute later something's launching from China or Japan or Russia, and you have to have like your phone up watching that one as your eyes are watching the other one, like
in real life. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
That is so crazy. And okay, so here's what we're going to do. For those of you listening, we're going to talk. I want to just keep talking shop because I love when I have someone else that's in this, like, and can really give us these behind the scenes, perspectives of a lot of things. And again, the expertise. Chris knows his stuff. So I love always hearing from Chris. But at the end of this, we have a little surprise that we're going to do with Chris, and it's going to be really fun. But for now, I want to hear your opinions on I think the first one that I'm actually most excited for you guys down at the Cape is freaking Starlink. You guys are going to get sick of Starlink launches. What?
Yeah, there are 2 more this year. I should say not 2 more. There are the first 2 operational batches set to go before the end of the year right now. In between 2 other flights. So I mean it's very weird because we've had this launch drought here. Actually the Delta 4 medium retirement with GPS was the last one we had from here over a month back in August.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're right. Dang, that puts it into perspective. Oh my word.
And I don't really count Icon in that because Icon took off from the skid strip at Cape Canaveral and then went so far out into the Atlantic and north that we didn't actually see it or hear it or anything from the Cape. So we've got those, and then 24 Starlinks next year. 24 Starlink launches of like 60 Starlinks each next year. It's going to be amazing. I'm really excited for that for a bunch of different reasons because I think. And this is just my opinion, I need to note, but I really think that's how they're going to get to, 5th booster reflight, 6th booster reflight, up to 10 very easily because they're all in-house. So, of course, you're going to want to test and prove to those who still need it proved to them that, the Falcon 9s can be reused multiple times with very little refurbishment. I think that's an excellent way to prove it. And I think that is how they end up getting to 24-hour flight reuse. Is if you have Starlinks ready, let's say at 40, already on the second stage and in their payload fairings, and you can launch a small ComSat or a NASA CRS flight from 39A, RTLS that booster, and then just pick it up and haul it to 40, pop it onto the second stage and haul it out and on. Like, I think that's how they end up doing it, is with Starlink.
Dude.
And I can't wait for that. The cadence out of here is going to be is certainly going to be like nothing people who are currently living here have seen. And I think that's going to take a lot of getting used to for a lot of folks that we're talking about. 24 Starlinks on top of SpaceX's other manifest, on top of the ULA manifest, is just like... And actually, if it's next year, on top of the SLS manifest, with SLS scheduled for next year as well.
And then we're getting soon into New Glenn, even around the corner, 2021-ish, and Vulcan.
It's just like, net 2020 is just going to be like a freaking banner year for the Cape. Oh, and I even forgot Starship within that. Starship testing at 39A.
It's going to feel like the floodgates just opened up, like, massively. I mean, from a pretty, like, mundane-ish set of launches in the past couple of years to, like, okay, like, all of them.
It really has, because, we got used to the low cadence flights at the beginning of the decade, and then we got used to 2 years. It was so weird how we got used to a high launch cadence with just 2 years of 2017 and 2018 with SpaceX. And then, of course, they've hit their, the rockets are ready, but the payloads aren't ready. Issues this year, which aren't really issues.
I was gonna say issues.
Issues, yeah.
Yeah.
But and then we kind of drop back to what has been for us a normal cadence, and it just seems like, what do I do with my time?
Right.
So it's going to be good to have that back. But Starlink, man, I can't wait for this for a variety of reasons. Not just the launches of them and the ability for more people to see them in their training orbits before they get up to their operational orbits where you can't really see them anymore, which the 60 that have already been launched sort of show how that'll work operationally. But even with the new FCC permits for like 40,000 of these things instead of 12,000, which just blew my mind. I'm interested in how that's going to come together. It's going to be so freaking awesome. I mean, I should really just like invest in a condo down there.
I know.
For
real. That's a thought with me and that area as well, and Boca Chica area. I mean, we're gonna have some really busy times and a lot of travel. We should do a photographer / like journalist house. That's what we should do. Just everyone pitches in.
Yeah, at these various locations. Because man, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's the travel that's coming up here. Because man, Boca Chica is remote. It is not hopping on a plane and going to Atlanta. It took me 13 hours of flying to get there when I went for this SpaceX event.
Yep, I understand that. And what people don't understand, I had a lot of people it takes you so long to get videos out. Why aren't you making videos? It takes me 4 days of driving to get down and back to Boca Chica, and plus, once you're down there, you waste a whole day, basically, to go from, your hotel out to Boca Chica, hang out where there's no data, and then, get back.
Or if there is data. So, Tim, I don't know about you, but this is an amazing story about Boca Chica. So, I was there for the first time for the SpaceX event, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we're driving out there, and then, because it's 30 minutes away from the nearest city,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we just arrive at a border checkpoint. And all of us in the car start freaking out because we left our passports in the hotel and we're like, why is there a border checkpoint? We didn't cross the border. Why is there a border checkpoint? And I look down at my phone and my phone says, welcome to Mexico. Here's your data plan. And I'm like, oh my God, how do we cross the border? I'm shutting my phone down because I'm no. I didn't activate international. No, what is happening?
Calling, right?
You don't actually cross the border. But you are you're basically you end up 50 feet from the border on that road to Boca Chica.
Yes.
And there's not a border fence there. It's just heavily patrolled.
And the river.
And the river. So you get so close that your phone thinks you've crossed the border.
Yeah.
Because there's no US cell tower within range at that point. And then you actually have to come back through border control when you come back from Boca Chica just to make sure everything's kosher there. So it's so amazingly remote, but I think that really helps paint the picture of how remote and how close to the US-Mexican border it is, because when Starship really starts launching from there, that's what I realized is this isn't just people from the US who are going to come down. People from Mexico are going to come up to the beaches as close as they can get as well. And there's got to be some some international cooperation on land, sea, and airspace closures for these things as well. Which is
I don't know what they're going to do.
Game, in the space flight realm.
What are they going to do when people have the ability to stand a mile and a half away, or 2.5 kilometers away, from a fully fueled mega rocket,
And that's just it. Some local Mexican police forces are going to have to close, part of that too. It's just, there are so many new cool things with Boca Chica that, are just I can't wait to see how they're going to work.
It's all new territory down there. It's literally the wild, wild west.
Yes.
And
it feels like that because when we came back from there was just a horse at 8:00 in the morning walking down the road like it was taking itself to work. No person. There was just, and it's Texas, okay.
Seriously, it is something else. So I'm curious, and really quick to kind of wrap it back up into Starlink stuff. I'm curious, will you sign up for Starlink yourself as soon as you can?
Oh yes.
Can you imagine having that for launches?
Primarily, it's for launches that I really wanted for, because a lot of these locations, not so much the Kennedy Space Center, but so many of the locations we go to are so remote that you're struggling for any type of connectivity. Boca's like that, Vandy's like that.
Oh God.
Just the ability to have a internet no matter where I go is super important for what I do. Not to mention the fact that before we started this, I had to reset my internet router here at the house because I upgraded, and apparently paying more means it drops out more times a day. So helpful.
I cannot wait for that though.
I really can't either, and just thinking of like the forward prospects of like how you could adapt a Starlink like internet system or OneWeb type system or things like that to Mars and to the moon, and how you could really help maintain that connectivity that we rely on so much here for the colonization efforts down the road is a huge, I think, bonus of where I can see that technology going in the future.
And something that I kind of realized that's really unique and interesting that I don't think a lot of people have quite grasped onto is like one of the biggest factors of not living like off the grid or living, like in a tiny home or something or an RV is the idea that like a lot of people still need to like work and be at an office and have proper connectivity. Imagine just being able to like, you know what, I'm going to go totally into the middle of the desert or on top of a mountain and literally just have solar panels out and sit and work literally anywhere.
Yep. And it's that, and to me, what I really come back to with this type of technology is, so many of us live in places where natural disasters can happen. Like in Florida, we're very lucky in that we see them coming days in advance with hurricanes, and we can get out if we need to. But like the middle swath of the country, like we actually saw last night from when we're recording this, of the really bad tornadoes and storms that happened throughout Texas, and the west coast of the U.S. with earthquakes, and propagate that out to all the places where these types of severe weather events are needed. To me, I look at that and say, so you have something that isn't connected to the grid, that only requires a built-in solar panel to connect upward to the satellite network. I mean, that to me, like in an earthquake and a natural disaster, that ability to either tell people, I'm fine, I don't need anything, you can concentrate your efforts elsewhere, or if there is, something that you need help with, to not lose that terrestrial communication network that is so fragile to these things still is, I think, a huge benefit that not a lot of people are talking about yet, but that we're going to see once these things are up and running.
Well, I think there's, of course, because I feel like it's mostly a quote-unquote controversy because it has anything to do with Elon, as for whatever reason, anything he does has some trail of, of news behind him, basically. But what do you think? Okay, well, let me preface this by saying I agree that I think there's a lot that's going to change when something like, internet constellation is happening. Like a lot of things that we don't even realize. But are you worried, as a fan of astronomy and things like that? What do you think about the whole mega constellation astronomy debate, basically, that's going back and forth?
Yeah, So I admit that it took me a little bit by surprise after the first Starlink batch was launched earlier this year, because it wasn't something I had stopped to think about yet. Because I tend to think, well, and I had been under the impression that with all of these major mega constellations that are under proposals and OneWeb and Starlink, which are actually under deployment, that this had all been discussed, right? Because how can you talk about launching 12,000 satellites into orbit without someone going, what about ground-based telescopes? Right.
Right.
And what was interesting to me at that conversation is that, the astronomy community seemed to be upset because they didn't realize the satellites were going to be as bright as they were. SpaceX was saying, look, these are just our test satellites, and they're not in their operational orientations and altitudes yet. Like, give us time to get them up there, see what they are, and then come talk to us. But it does sound like they've done some good things in terms of like making sure that the radio frequencies they're using for communication don't interfere with the radio frequencies that are used for astronomy. These things are very small comparatively to some of the huge geocomsats that are up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that what did kind of was eye-opening for me was when the number of Starlinks went from the proposed 12,000 to 40,000. That's a lot more than anyone was thinking about, and I do have a bit of a internal worry. Not that you're going to look up at the night sky and all you're going to see are 40,000 little dots of light moving around. The planet, that's obviously a concern at some of the extreme polar regions.
Right.
But
or dawn and dusk maybe a little bit.
Yeah, but I still struggle to see with the different altitudes they're all going to be at, the different orbits they're all going to be at. I still struggle with how much of an impact it will be. The only thing I do worry about are moments when and to tie it back to a NASA mission, actually, like when earlier this year when New Horizons flew by the Kuiper Belt object MU-69, NASA had spent the prior 2 years using their ground-based and air-based telescopes to look at that object when it passed in front of another star, and that passage was less than a second. Every time they only saw it once, even though they tried to see it multiple times, right? That's how small it was. And come to find out how pancake shaped it was. But what I would worry about are like those moments when we're looking at stellar occultation events to learn about other bodies, and you only have 1 second in a very specific thing. Are those things that we're going to be able to know exactly where Starlinks and OneWebs and Telsats and all of these things are going to be, so they don't end up ruining the occultation that we're looking at, right, by accident? Right. That's what I worry about most. I don't worry about like launching things from the surface of the planet because the distances that we're still talking about, it's still very easy to thread that needle and get out. We're not talking about that. But I think what it did open up too in terms of the number is the who bears the responsibility with the mega constellations when you have potential collision avoidance maneuvers that need to be performed. We saw this quite interestingly is the adjective I'm going to use with the European Space Agency satellite that had to move out of the way of a Starlink because they came within the 10-kilometer box that you'd be worried about up there. And then there was finger pointing from ESA saying, well, SpaceX just didn't communicate with us, and SpaceX then came with the proof of like, well, yes, you did, but then the follow-up got rooted, so like we need to look at other, like there are those things that need to be determined. But what I was really left with at the end of the day is kind of I wasn't quite sure what the problem was with that, because one of them had to move, right? And I don't think it's a cut and dry, like if to ask SpaceX and OneWeb and Telsat when theirs is up there too, or even Iridium, right, which has a 66 networks up there. I don't really think it's fair to say like if you're launching a mega constellation, it's the mega constellation satellite that has to move, right? It just because it's a mega constellation, and without it we wouldn't have this issue, right? Like, sometimes the International Space Station moves out of the way. Sometimes it's the other object that can move out of the way. It's always a horse trade back and forth. But what I think it really highlighted was the need for, like, we have early warning systems for weather events, for this, and, for all these terrestrial things here on the ground. I think what we're seeing is, like, we need to be forward thinking about how that early warning collision system is going to work for space.
Yep. Yes, I think you're right. I think we're just at a new era of all of this stuff. We got a little bit of planning to figure out, some new infrastructure, new communications, but it's an exciting time for a lot of reasons, as we just talked about. But here's one. So on this show, we do a segment called "Why Don't They Just?"
Okay.
And I'm normally kind of in charge of that. And last time we did an interview, I forgot to do a "Why Don't They Just?" So I'm going to make up for that right now, because we're going to do a small handful of "Why Don't They Just?" And these are fun ones. I want to hear your thoughts on these. Let me share the screen here quick, and I'm excited to hear what you think. So the first "Why Don't They Just?" comes from Jonathan Dirks at Jonataurus on Twitter, and it's "Why don't they just?" and "Why will SpaceX not just catch Crew Dragon or Cargo Dragon with mystery/mischief like they catch the fairings? Seems like it'd be a soft landing without the saltwater problem." And just for full disclosure here, I think we've actually done something we've talked about this on the show a long time ago, but I think it's worth re-mentioning, especially now that they're having success, a great deal of success with these so far, or now they've kind of figured it out. Chris, why don't they just do that?
So, as everything in space does, it comes down to physics. It's a lot easier to catch a 1,000-pound single payload fairing in a net than it is to catch a multi-ton Crew Dragon, which would probably just blow right through the net and the deck of mystery and mischief as it came down. So if you look at the video that Elon posted of the first time they caught the fairing, right, in the ship, it's descending very, 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 very slowly, right? It just kind of eases into the net like you would ease into a bathtub, right?
Right.
Versus Dragon, which is basically doing a cannonball off the diving board into the pool. Even under parachute, right? Like it descends so much quicker because it's so heavier than them. So it's just easier to pull them out of the water. Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. And I think the other thing that people forget is, again, especially with weight and something like a boat, if you have a giant mass off on one side of a net, when those arms are 4 times the span of the ship itself, that might not end too well.
If Crew Dragon didn't hit the dead center of that net, it would be a really interesting visual of...
Well, and it should be reminded, I actually did find somewhere, I don't remember where it was, but I had seen a time where Elon did actually mention wanting to try to catch Dragon. To be fair, like it was probably considered, and it's not to say they won't. Who knows? It's SpaceX. They might someday just go, you know what? We're getting really good at this. We're just going to beef up these boats. We're going to do a fleet of 4 boats that all drive in formation or something. Who freaking knows when it comes to SpaceX? But for now, with the current setup with mischief, definitely not physically possible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to mention here too is while we never ever want to see this, right, is you don't want a boat like Mischief and Mystery, which are crewed, right, because someone physically has to be driving them, underneath I'm going to call them the Dragon 2 variants, because there's the Crew Dragon and the Cargo Dragon version of the Dragon 2 variant here. And you don't want a boat with crew underneath an object that is solely relying on parachutes.
Right.
Because if there were to ever, which there hasn't been in human space flight in the U.S. side, if there were ever to be a parachute failure, you don't want what would be at that point a missile coming down at the boat.
Right. And something still full of hypergolic fuels too.
Right. Which we've also seen.
Yes. So just in general, it's always like better safe than sorry. So that brings us to our next one. These are fun ones this week. I just grabbed a handful. Normally we only do one, but I feel like this is a good thing to do with you. Okay, why don't they just... Will there be a version of Starship that has ion thrusters? Also, would there ever be a version of Starship that will never land, as in like only a space travel once launched like type of thing? What do you think?
Ooh, the ion thruster one is absolutely fascinating. I I think the first rule with SpaceX is never rule anything out. Because yeah, I think Tim, you and I were joking at the Starship event that when Starship is up and running, we were like, well, what's Elon's next project? And we're like, well, warp drive. I mean, that just seems like the next, right? Like the next totally implausible thing to just move on to, and somehow make it work. I'd honestly say no for the ion thruster question on this one, mainly because the goal with Starship is to get to your destination and get there very quickly, right? Like as quickly as you can, right? They're talking about, like a 2, 3, 4 month transit to Mars, where, what we're seeing now are like the 9 months to a year, depending on planetary alignment things, right? Mm-hmm. That seems to be where they're going with Starship. And ion thrusters, while they're very good and very useful for our smaller scale fleets of spacecraft throughout the solar system that have to go to different destinations, but they don't have to get there quickly because they don't have a crew on board. You're not worried about food or supplies, right? That's where ion propulsion and ion thrusters come in really handy and are really useful. Mm-hmm. But for Starship, you really want the Raptor engines to be able to fire to get you where you want to go as quickly as possible. So I personally venture no on that. But like I said, it's SpaceX. Never say never again, as the old James Bond saying goes.
Exactly. And I'll say the big factor, or one of the big factors, is just pure mass. Mm-hmm. The thrust to weight ratio of an ion drive is horrendous. Like it's basically non-existent. It's like throwing a penny out the back like every week or something. Like this is like horrible basically. But the one thing is it can be a huge delta. So someday, maybe not Starship, because Starship has to have all of the aerodynamic, the landing hardware, all of these other things, is pushing around a lot of additional mass, and using something like an ion drive to do that just might not be the best option. It just is such a low thrust to weight ratio, but it can add a ton of delta V that you can burn halfway to Mars, turn around, and burn halfway down to slow back down. It is an option with something like an ion drive, but it also adds a lot of complication, a lot of extra costs, a new manufacturing process. Like
and like one of the actually one of the fascinating things about Starship that I don't think I've heard them talk about actually yet is how is it going to be powered? Because it used to have the solar fins that come out of it. So, and we haven't seen any type of solar array or solar panel or anything just yet. Certainly on the outside of it, which would raise some thermal dynamic questions about how they would survive reentry. So I'm assuming it's going to use fuel cells, like the shuttle did to help produce drinking water and stuff like that.
Right.
But that would open up another can of worms because your ion engines are technically solar electric propulsion.
Right.
So you would need solar panels sticking out the back. You would need the xenon gas and all of that.
Huge solar panels sticking out the back.
For things like this. So I don't... I think that's just a bit too unnecessarily complicated for Starship, especially with Elon talking about what did he call it? De-engineering or de-evolving?
Yeah, basically. Well, and it kind of goes like, for instance, I think we can already look at what SpaceX did with the Falcon 9. They could have easily made, like, say, a Raptor engine upper stage or a hydrogen upper stage that would be substantially more delta V. But like, why? They're doing what they need to do with a really simple system, streamlining manufacturing and making a rocket that's as cheap and affordable, as opposed to all of a sudden you start now adding an ion variant with all the things you just listed. And that's just not really the SpaceX way. We're used to seeing a company that is streamlining, and especially with mass manufacturing of things, that definitely seems to be their biggest thing. Yeah. But let me answer the Starship version that will never land. I don't think it would ever be a Starship version. I think it would just be a payload, or a set of payloads could launch on Starship that would just be interconnected, because you don't want like all of the extra weight that is Starship. If you're making like a Aldrin, cycler, some kind of cycler, or something like that, you just want thin space only hardware, and all that stuff. So in my opinion, like something like that would just be better off being a dedicated vehicle and system that could launch on Starship, but not a like space only Starship.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I was kind of struggling there to think of what the what a mission would be that would call for a Starship to just perpetually stay in space.
Right.
And I couldn't really think of one, because even the cargo version of a spaceship that's capable of launching these, or theoretically capable of launching these immensely large payloads, right? Mm-hmm. You would still want to get that payload out of Starship, either for it to perform its mission, or even thereafter, like, it would probably actually end up being more efficient once launched on Starship to then just use the propulsion on that particular spacecraft itself that was launched by Starship, instead of having to haul around the dry mass of the Starship itself. Which, we don't think about the area beyond Earth orbit as having particles that could really affect a spacecraft, because a lot of our spacecraft are really small. But if you have a huge mass like Starship in orbit, and if you're aiming it in a direction where it's like broadside being hit by the solar wind coming off the sun, that can have some effects on heliophysics drag and stuff like that as well.
Interesting. So we got one more here, and this one kind of goes back. We were having a conversation about Kerbal Space Program a couple of minutes ago with you, off air. I like this one. This comes from Gerben. Oh, did I say who that last one was from? That was Steudlein on Twitter, Mark. And this one comes from Gerben at Rampart with 2 A's at the end. Why don't they just build a Concorde-like stainless steel horizontal takeoff airplane powered by Raptors to compete with the aviation industry? And then he says, "Be gentle, winky face."
I'm not actually sure why he said "be gentle." Because on the surface, I get where that question is coming from, right? Like the Concorde was this supersonic plane that could do like New York to London in 3 hours or something like that, Paris to New York in 4. But the economic case for it just never really took off.
Right.
But honestly, my answer to this is, well, that is just Starship.
Right.
Elon didn't touch on this in the last update, though. He mentioned afterward that the next update for Starship would kind of largely focus, at least in part, on Earth point to point. But what they're really talking about is just using the 3 Raptor engine Starship upper stage, and instead of having a super heavy booster on the base of it, just use that for Earth point to point anywhere on the planet in 45 minutes or less, depending on where you're going. And at that point, at the price point they've been talking about, even for that, that's basically your updated version of the Concorde.
Right. Yeah. And let me answer this. This is something that I learned in Kerbal Space Program. I was working on, this was way back in the day. I did this mission where my goal was to take off or go to Eve, which is, for those of you that don't play Kerbal Space, it's kind of like Venus almost. It's like the Venusian version in the Kerbal world. So it has a really thick atmosphere. It has a lot of high gravity, and it's really difficult to get off of it. My goal was, I did it, and I completed this. No quick saves, 1 launch, and I wanted it to be a space plane that could take off from Eve. And everyone that was watching me develop this vehicle kept saying, like, you got to stay in the atmosphere longer. What are you doing, man? Like, you need to make this so you're like in the atmosphere for a long time, utilizing the wings and stuff. And the trick is, it's not air breathing. You can't, on that planet, you couldn't breathe air. And in the same sense, a Raptor engine cannot breathe. It's not drawing in the oxygen. So it's not, the only time you'd want to fly horizontally is if your thrust to weight ratio is below 1, where you can use aerodynamic lift to actually increase your altitude. After that point, as soon as you have a thrust to weight ratio higher than 1, you want to get out of the atmosphere, because that atmosphere is only there to remove energy from you. Basically, it's only there to drag you back down to Earth, quite literally. So the fastest way to use a Raptor engine and to get to your point B is exactly what you said. You take off vertically, you get out of the atmosphere, and you just use a Starship. You don't need a lifting body at all. A lifting body with a rocket engine that's not in any way air breathing is not necessarily advantageous.
Yeah, and opens up a lot more complexity into a system where, you know, with Starship and with rockets, right, you're designing them to be going right around Mach 1, the speed of sound, as the aerodynamic pressure begins to drop as you climb out of the atmosphere. So you're not having to design, right, you purposefully over-design your airframe, but you're not having to design it to take like a sustained 3G load. You're sustaining it for a 1G load for a very, very short amount of time as you punch through the area of maximum dynamic pressure in the atmosphere and then get out of that. So
that's true too. Yeah, get out of that. That's the main reason. And again, it kind of goes back to Mark's thing about like simplicity. Really, like if they have a Starship that's capable of doing it, and all that stuff, and it's a proven system, like why redesign anything else and even do anything else?
and I kind of want to go back to Kerbal Space there for a second, right? Because for those of you who do play it, or for those of you who don't, right, when you're flying these rockets and you're using, whether you're you can fly them manually or you can fly them with the McJeb autopilot, right? And if you notice when you fly them with McJeb, right, it will tell you what it wants that starting pitch rate to be. That basically it wants that rocket to barely be an inch or millimeter off the ground, and like the old Mercury suborbital flights of Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom did, immediately pitch over to 45 degrees, right? But that's not what rockets actually do, right? They punch up very quickly with very little pitch to get out of the dense lower atmosphere, and then they pitch over. So Good call. So Chris, where can people find you? You have a handful of things. Where can people find you on the internet if they want to continue the conversation? Yeah, if you want to continue the conversation, easiest way is via Twitter. My handle is @ChrisG_NSF. And my articles I post there. Articles are also posted to the main @NASA Spaceflight account and are at our website. And you know what? If you want to follow along as many times as we can, we do some good live streams too of various events. It's not just SpaceX. We do it for all of them. So you can definitely follow along on YouTube as well to see those live streams of various rocket events.
Absolutely. They're fantastic. You guys do a really, really good job. I love seeing you and when DOS is out there too. It's really impressive what you guys can do too.
Which hopefully we will be together again for the Antares launch in a couple weeks.
Sweet. Oh, jealous. I'm jealous. I'll be having to watch that one from afar, unfortunately.
This will be my first one not watching from afar and actually being there for it. So I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, I've never heard a solid rocket booster that would be. Oh, I guess. Oh, you won't be able to. First stage is liquid.
It's liquid. Yeah.
So you'll just be hearing. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it'd be cool.
Yeah, our next solid flight is actually out of here. The OFT Starliner flight at the end of the year is the next one with solids.
Yeah. That'll be a really fun one. I'll be down for that one most likely.
Definitely.
So that's awesome. Well, Chris, thanks so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure I'll see you really soon. I'm guessing most likely probably down there for OFT1. That'll be awesome.
That sounds great. It's always awesome talking to you, Tim, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll catch you later.
And we're back.
Yay.
So you just said that the Model Y is under attack. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the war against the Model Y.
The war against
big headlines.
Yeah. Look at this thing, man. This is the Nissan Ariya.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the House Stark. I mean,
there's an I in there. There's an extra I.
Yeah. Arrow wheels, not a fan. Oh, there's a plug here. So
how weird for an electric car.
Yeah. Okay, so the the Tokyo Auto Show is just wrapped up or is wrapping up, depending on when you're listening to this. And there are some pretty cool things being announced out there, including, and you would imagine, obviously, the Japanese brands having a big show of it. The Nissan Ariya Concept, which is a compact SUV, all electric. It looks stunning. It is definitely like the best looking Nissan in the world. Yes, it's a concept, so it's, not going to make it fully to production. But some of the specs are pretty incredible. I don't know where it went. Over 300 miles of range and, fast charging, all those things, really competitive price. I mean, this is amazing if they pull this off. And let's not forget, Nissan knows how to make electric cars.
They were kind of the first.
Yeah, they were definitely one of the pioneers with the Nissan Leaf. And, now we look at the Nissan Leaf and we go, okay, yeah, I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to a lot of the other ones. But this is the most popular market segment in the United States and one of the world's largest auto markets. Electric cars are definitely hot right now. People are liking them, or at least in my little echo chamber. That's what I hear. And if Nissan can make one, that is going to be a real mass market option. So stoked on this. I really want to check one of these out. Maybe it'll come to the LA Auto Show. I'm not quite sure. But, it's still a couple years away, all that. But the fact that they're even putting this out there is amazing. And the fact that it's, like, really here, like there's an actual, it's not just a picture of a mock-up. It's like, they unveiled it with an actual concept car that was built. I mean, dude, this thing, what do you think? Is this the sexiest Nissan you've ever seen?
I mean, it's a neat-looking car. It kind of bugs me. Well, I don't take concept cars too seriously, usually, just because they so rarely actually become anything. And they're usually just like, hey, look what we can do. And I'm kind of sitting here like, okay, so a lot of those specs are similar to Tesla cars that are already out there.
Yep.
But this is only a concept car.
Yeah.
It's pretty. I'd love to see it.
Right. I think the deal for me is that it really, I mean, it just shows the direction of where we're going, right? Like we all kind of say, yeah, EVs are coming. But now that you have Nissan, so this is something I've been waiting for a long time, because I've said it before, like Tesla will always be a luxury brand. They will always have expensive cars. They will always be super tech and super awesome. And not everyone's going to want that, nor will everyone afford that. That's fine. It's totally fine. Look at the iPhone, right? Apple has, 15% of the smartphone market? Something like 40% in the U.S., but over worldwide, it's like 15%. But that other 85% wouldn't exist if Apple didn't make the iPhone, right? So it's totally fine.
Ooh, and someone's going to go off on that one.
No. I mean, it's true. Like I'm a huge fan of Android, but my phone would not be nearly as cool if it weren't for the iPhone. And so I look at that and I go, that's what we're seeing here, right? This really is the Apple of this industry, because when you look at it, Nissan is not going to make a car with nearly as much advanced tech and as many bells and whistles and as sexy as a Tesla is. They just won't. But as close as they get would never have happened had Tesla not done it first. And so that's one. The other one is Ford is coming out with a, wait for it, Mustang-inspired CUV. I don't get it, but apparently it looks a lot like a Mustang. And it's a crossover SUV, and they are going to be unveiling it on November 17th, I believe, in Los Angeles. So very soon from now, just a couple weeks. I don't know if...
That's a nice looking profile.
Yeah. And, Ford has for a while now been really... Like, they got a new CEO, and then I think that CEO got canned, and they've got another CEO. But I believe if you look at Ford's Twitter profile, like bio, it says something about, like, transportation, mobility, electrification. So, I mean, the fact that, and they're talking about 300 miles of range, performance-oriented design. I mean, man, this is, Ford is as gas guzzler as they get, right?
Yeah.
It's the epitome of the F-150 and all those kind of things. So, and, they also have the electric F-150 that they did a bunch of stuff.
Right.
If you check out their YouTube channel, they're coming out with videos almost every week. EV myth debunked. So they are really, I mean, at least on the surface, they are really doing this. And I would love to check this out. I'm just so hyped that big automakers like this are seeming to take it seriously, not like these, compliance vehicles that they had to sell because they were selling so many gas guzzling SUVs and trucks.
Yeah. How crazy would it be if Ford became Tesla's biggest competitor?
That'd be amazing.
Here's what like just looking at that. So yeah, they have the F-150, which is clearly going to compete in some way with the Tesla truck,
right,
which is not here yet.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've got this thing that is very clearly a competitor to the Model Y, which is not quite here yet.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting that they're not really competing with their current models that are out there, but they're competing with their future models. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of like positioning themselves to get ahead on these market segments that Tesla's not in yet.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's interesting.
You're right. And it might be, and Rivian, actually, this is a funny story about them. They originally were designing an electric sedan. I wonder what possibly could have changed their mind as to that not being a great idea. Tesla's won that segment. Like, there's not, I don't know, maybe someone else can do it, but I don't see someone making a better car than the Tesla Model 3 in that segment, or in the higher end luxury segment. I don't see a better car than the Model S. SUV, yeah, 100%. The Model X is incredible. I drive it daily. It's amazing. I love it. It is not for everyone. It is definitely like you want a lot of attention and people to think you're cool because you were a nerd. So, now you got money. Like, that's, my insecurities. This is me with, the big F-350 when I am single guy. I don't need any of that. Like, the Model X is not for everyone, right? Definitely a good, if you're making a car and you want to make the CUV space, go for it. That is a great market segment to go after. The sedan market, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. Now, with that said, Mercedes just came out with the EQS. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, let me pull this up. What's inside family?
What was the SUV? The
EQC.
EQC. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Well,
so I'm going to assume this is a sedan of some kind.
You would be assuming correctly.
Oh, look at me.
Oh, I can't show Dan's video because it's going to strike us. Okay. Go watch What's Inside Family. That's how me and Dan became friends. I told you that story, right?
The monetization or the copyright issue.
So okay. So
you could become friends again.
Yeah. So my friend Dan Markham from What's Inside, and he has a vlog channel called What's Inside Family, just was out there in Tokyo where he was the first YouTuber to be given access to this. But if you just Google it, Mercedes EQS, this is a concept car that's like a true concept car. This thing is way over the top and wild, and it is a competitor with the Model S. The battery is the big question. Mercedes, can you make a better interior and luxurious car than Tesla? Yeah, 100%. No question. Can you make a car that goes further and has better performance than a Tesla sedan? To be seen. Yet to be seen. Clearly they have good engineering, but this is a big question. So that you're right. So this segment, this crossover SUV segment, in terms of electric vehicles, wide open. Go for it. Sedans, just forget it. Just don't even go there,
And there does seem to be a graveyard of upstart electric sedan companies like Lucid Air and Fisker, and there's probably some others I'm not thinking of.
Fisker's a weird. Faraday Future is the other one.
Faraday Future. That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Fisker's a weird case, but I think Lucid is still hanging in there. And because I saw Fully Charged, Chelsea Sexton, who you may remember from Who Killed the Electric Car, actually is working with Fully Charged now. She did some interview with their team. I didn't catch all the important bits, but Lucid's still hanging around.
Okay, well, fair enough.
It definitely seems though like in general, 2020 is going to be a big year for legit electric vehicles. I mean, I would say, like, what's the minimum range you think a car to be considered a real option for today's? Like, how many miles does it need to get?
Well, everybody says 200. Like, if you're below 200, you just can't be taken seriously. I feel like you hear that a lot. I feel like it needs to be higher. I feel like until you're at like 250, 300 or higher, that's when people who never really thought about an EV before would be like, okay, I think I can. Yeah. That sounds like I could do that. Like going back to my brother-in-law visiting, he asked how far it goes. Actually, what he asked was about phantom drain, basically, because when I was in California recently with you guys, I just kind of left it sitting at the airport and I was like monitoring it to see, and it went down like 4 miles or something like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have Sentry mode on or anything, but anyway, I mentioned that to him and he was like, oh, and how many miles does it get? And I was like, oh, like 325, I think, and he was like, oh, wow. So yeah. I think the average non-EV driver, people who aren't all that interested in EVs, it has to be up in that area before they really start to feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing out there is the, like, who's your competition here? Because if you're trying to be better than the first generation Nissan Leaf, great. Yeah, you can do that. But if you want to be better than a Honda Civic, yeah, you really have to throw up some big numbers in that. And if you think just about how phones are, even how if your display doesn't have a certain brightness or your camera doesn't have a certain megapixels, you look at it and you go, why am I going to buy that phone? Now she's home. So we can wrap there, everyone. Yeah. But to me, it's 250 miles is where I think you need to be. And a lot of these cars coming out are saying that. So all good stuff, man. I'm stoked.
It's crazy. Like, it's not that I'm addicted to being right, but when you've been saying these kinds of things for a couple of years and you're starting to really see it start to gel and really take shape, it's exciting. It's like, wow, this is really happening, Yeah,
and the irony in a lot of this is I think all these other companies making these electric cars is just going to help sell more Teslas.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. Because you're going to look at it and you're going to go, that's really cool. How do I charge this? Oh.
Where do I charge this?
Yeah. What if I want to go on a road trip? Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. What about over-the-air updates? Oh. Like, you're going to have all these things that Tesla just has mastered, and you're going to be like, man, well, since I'm already in the market for an electric car, let me just look and see what else is out there.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, like maybe they would have never considered it, and now they're in.
Yeah. And something else that occurred to me talking to my brother-in-law about this is that I don't think about this very often, but like I have the absolute best case scenario for having an EV. Like I've got a garage, I've got a little charge point right there that's like right next to my box, my fuse box, so it's like it couldn't have been a better situation for me. But there's a lot of people that don't have garages, a lot of people that live in apartments that park on the street, and they need that infrastructure, which Tesla has. Yeah. And other cars, I mean, it's still growing. It's still growing, but it's still not quite there. It's still a challenge. So.
Yep. More to come.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
Speaking of more to come, what do you have working on there?
What am I working on?
Yeah.
I knew you were going with that. What am I doing on Monday? I got a big video on artificial gravity. Somehow, like all my Monday videos this month were on space stuff for some reason. But I talk about various ideas for creating artificial gravity in space, the drawbacks to all of them, and why we haven't done it yet, and why it's necessary. So.
And are you parlaying off the Andy Weir stuff that you guys talked about?
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
I'm milking it for all it's worth.
No, 100%. That was really, really interesting how you were like, oh, this is so hard. And he's like, no, we got it. He's like,
well, so just to give you a little tip along the way, like, so there's there's the gravity that we experience here on Earth where everything is pulling down at the same rate. And if you do the rotational gravity, which we always see in movies and whatnot, it has to be a certain distance out, or else literally the gravity in your head is different than the gravity at your feet. So your body will like,
and it's like a massive distance, right? It's like several kilometers or something.
It's like 4 miles.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Something like the engineering involved is insane. But on top of that, and I talk about it in the video, rotational gravity does not behave exactly the same way as the gravity that we have here. So like even if you had that 4 mile radius and you had like had the kind of gravity where your head wasn't floating away from the rest of your body, it's still created through rotational momentum. So like if you throw a ball up in the air, it wouldn't come straight down.
It goes like sideways.
Curve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything would just kind of like shift.
And like if you had like a cup of coffee, it's like you're standing still with a cup of coffee, but the water's like waves are pushing it off to the side or something.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. It's just, it would take you a long time to get used to, and
really
if you like just standing still, you're probably okay, but like as soon as you turn your head, the fluid in your ears will get all messed up. And
in Daniel Suarez's book Delta V, he talked a lot about how they it was very Andy Weir like, right? It was like very science heavy, like very kind of accurate descriptions and things, or
I've heard a lot of people reference that book. I should go check it out.
It's good. Yeah. His other books that talk about different stuff with like this dystopian world, I mean those are like it's called Damon. Those are like two of my favorite books ever. They are amazing. This one is like, it's good, but it's a little bit too real for me. Like how The Martian's like, okay, yeah, like you read the book and you're like, got it. It seems so real. I think Daniel Suarez, the books of his that I've read that I enjoyed more were when things are like a bit further out, where it's like, I don't know how that's going to work, but that's amazing. So yeah, no, he's cool. A great author though. I really enjoy his stuff. So
you have more of the convincing your wife to buy a Tesla videos on the way?
Yeah, and apparently, based on people's comments, my wife is the only one in the world that was difficult to convince. Because people were like, 3-part series. I took her for a test drive, and she said yes. I'm like, fine. I guess you guys, you got money like that.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm like, not jealous at all. Yeah,
I don't think she would be the only one. I think I know of one myself that would be difficult. But
yeah. So next week is okay. So this one was finding the perfect Tesla. So you can like design. Okay, like here's the one. Next week is crafting your story. So you have to actually develop a pitch. So I get into, I completely understand the psychology of women. So I just lay that all out there. I'm being sarcastic, but
he's being sarcastic.
Yeah, I have that kind of like deadpan humor where people sometimes think I'm serious.
Well, not everybody gets sarcasm.
Yeah,
as I've learned in my years on YouTube.
So, anyways, so that's what next week is. It's about actually developing your pitch to your wife to get her to buy a Tesla. Then after that, it's an interview with Jenny, where she explains, how I fooled her into this big hoax that we're living.
Well, at least we're all on the same page there. So
that's right. I do think man's greatest achievement was convincing women that they were worth mating with. That's really like it right there. Like beyond that, men, I don't know.
We've been coasting ever since.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, all right, dude. Well, I'll let you get back to your growing family and taking care of everybody.
Yeah, and we'll see you.
Give my congrats to the wife.
Will do.
Her name is Jenny. She has a name. Just so you know.
I just call her the wife.
Okay, so I guess we'll see you in
our
ludicrous
future.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you like what we do and you want to kind of help get it out there, you can give us a nice review on any of your podcast streaming platforms, whichever one you use. That kind of helps get it out there. Also, we do have a Patreon set up, so you can join us there at patreon.com/ourludicrousfuture. You can get your name in the credits, meet a whole other group of like-minded people. It's a lot of fun. We do appreciate it. We'll see you there.